Hey, I'm Lindy Boone, and you're watching Life Minute TV.
Daughter of the legendary entertainer Pat Boone, Lindy Boone grew up performing all over the country as the Boone family with her parents and 3 sisters. Years later, after a successful career as a fitness trainer and raising 3 kids of her own, she's still singing, writing songs, books, and spreading a positive message of faith, hope, and love after tragedy. This is a Life Minute with Lindy Boone.
When your happy turns to tears and you're broken by your fears,
We learned to sing in the car with my mother teaching us. I have 3 sisters, and she sang with her sisters, and my dad is a singer. And my mother really started off as a singer as well, but she ended up having 4 daughters really fast and was a stay-at-home mom. But she taught us to sing. And then we ended up traveling as a family in my dad's show. We ended up performing, and that led to recording. So we did a lot of singles, hoping to have that breakthrough single. But we did some Christian albums that were well known and even got nominated for a Grammy on one of those. So we sang a lot together until we ended up splitting up to have our own families and move away, and it got to be too hard, and Debbie's career took off.
and you light up my life. Spend some time with your creator. Are you grateful that he made you?
What came to my mind was the word Wordlayer. I had actually concocted that word many years before when I had a book coming out. And it was the spiritual journey of after my son Ryan had a brain injury. And so Wordlayer had a lot to do with my awareness of the power of my own words that I would speak as I was going through such a difficult time. The reason it got made was I eventually played the song for him when I got to sing it at my church. I spoke and I sang it, and I just showed him on my cell phone, "Oh, Daddy, I sang the song I wrote." And even though I had played it for him before, this was different when he saw me standing there and singing it. And his record company guy was there as well. And this was just in his family home in Nashville, just a few of us in the kitchen. And they both went, wow. They wanted to know what I was doing with the song. And I said, "Oh, well, it's in my computer and I play it for people from time to time." And they definitely wanted to see it made into a full production. And they made it possible later on in that year to come to Nashville, fly my sisters in. We hadn't sung together in a really long time. And we created the song and the video. And so it's a YouTube video as well. If people haven't seen it, it's kind of the making of the song. My dad was in it. He was there hearing it for the first time and needed a tissue right off the bat, because this is so meaningful for him to see his 4 daughters singing this song with this meaning after a long time since we've sung together. Ryan was my first son. I have 3 kids, all very wonderful. One day he went up to the roof of his apartment building with his roommate, and he stepped on a skylight. And the skylight, he really didn't mean to step on it. He was trying to step across it, and his foot came down on it and it broke, and it was 3 stories above the ground. He fell and he incurred a severe brain injury. So that changed all of our lives, and that was about 23 years ago. So we've walked this brain injury world for a long time. He has come back to us in many ways, but he still lives with us. He has caregivers 24/7. He's in therapy every day. But he has regained an awful lot that wasn't expected. And I just am so grateful for what has returned. And I focus on that, and every day celebrate the fact that I can hear his voice, because it took 15 months before I heard his voice again. He can smile and say, "I love you." And he's got great command of his vocabulary, but he also has behavior that, we'd love to do without, but that's part of TBI, traumatic brain injury. So we started a nonprofit, Ryan's Reach, and that's been about 20 years ago. And we've been able to help an awful lot of people get therapy after their injury, and insurance cuts them off. And we also started 2 group homes for people with traumatic brain injury, because there's just hardly any homes out there for people with brain injury, and it's kind of specific. And before we started them, we could only find homes that were homes for the elderly, and they would place one maybe younger person with a brain injury in an environment like that. But we've started 2 that are strictly for people with TBI, the younger population, that we hope to see continue to recover and be stimulated and have as normal of a life as they can have in a residential community. It's shocking when you've never had suffering in your life, and I never had. I was 45 years old and everything had gone fairly well. So it was shocking to see something that you always kind of would hear about and think it was always happening to somebody else, but not to my son, not to my family. And so it's an opportunity to grow. And I definitely, being from a family of faith, I delved more into and pressed into my faith. You ask a lot of questions, and you kind of, all the other peripheral stuff falls aside, and you ask the important questions and you decide how you're going to face it. And for me, it was leaning on family, leaning on God, believing that prayer matters, believing that my own words matter, and then having acceptance and looking for what I had to be grateful for every day. And that's a lesson that, it takes time to practice it. There's an awful lot you can dwell on of sorrow, but I recommend to people to start listing the things that you can be grateful for. And sometimes it was as simple as, I'm grateful he can swallow. I'm grateful that he wasn't alone when he fell, because somebody could call 911. I just started with very basic things, but now I'm so grateful I can hear him say, I love you. I'm so grateful that I can feel his arms around me and he can hug me and he knows who we are. Even though his life, he doesn't remember what he had for breakfast. He lives in this present moment. And as he's living in the present moment, he's teaching me to live in the present moment and say, right now, I'm grateful. Right now, I am content. And so that's how I get through.
Stone by stone and brick by brick.
Dad's 90th fabulous weekend with our immediate family, my sisters, their husbands, their kids, their grandkids. My dad he says 17, I think he's off count. I think there's 15 great grandkids.
Hospitals, we need each other so.
People say, what's next musically? I never wrote a song before Wordlayer. I have written a couple songs since then, but I don't really know if they have commercial value or if they are just for me. I've written a song for my grandson because I'm a new grandmother, and my husband said, you should write a song for Bryce. And I laughed and I said, you think I write songs now? But then a title came, the words came, and I wrote this really sweet lullaby for anybody that has a grandchild called My Baby's Baby. So there's something in my heart that wants to see that come to life. And then I also have written a worship song. So I have songs that have been coming to me, and maybe they'll get made. But I'm very open to it. And when people say, what's next? I go, I don't know. We'll see.
To hear more of this interview, visit our podcast, Life Minute TV, on iTunes and all streaming podcast platforms.